Hi everyone, this is Raven from Curious Corvid Publishing, and today we are going to be talking to Danny O'Day, the author of The Last Man in Cleveland. I'm so excited to bring this to you. I have been looking forward to it all week. It's going to be a great time. We're going to be answering some questions that people posed on Instagram, and as well as some behind the scenes things to see what's going on with Danny, with his project, with anything that's up and coming. It's going to be wonderful. His book, The Last Man in Cleveland, debuts March 15th. It is available for pre-order now. You can get it on Amazon, all major bookstores, or you can get a signed hardback edition from Curious Corvid Publishing. So, The Last Man in Cleveland. Isn't that beautiful? It's a wraparound cover. It's fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and read to you the blurb for the description for the back of the book. Simon Lazarus was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, where he paved roads and worked on construction with his friend, Bill Polsky. Bill Polsky's wife was headed to the Olympics. This would prove to be very unfortunate. Officer Olan Oliveira was focused on providing security for the Olympics and intercepting jewel thieves. It might have been quite successful if it hadn't been for the bats. Ivana Carvalho, the youngest minister of health in the history of Brazil, was counting down the days until the tourists of the Olympic Games returned home and she could focus on the emerging bat problem. As it turns out, this was a rather reckless misjudgment. General Hunter Wallace Wertheim III had two objectives: protect the visiting president of the United States at the Olympic Games and control the outbreak of a mysterious bat-borne illness. He would do neither, despite being quite capable and not at all spineless. Narrated by the writer, we follow the story of seemingly innocuous people and the events that lead to the end of the world. The apocalypse has never felt so real as we enter the world of bats, sickness, and the last man in Cleveland. It's a beautiful book. It's an exciting story. It has all kinds of things going on in it. So many bright and vibrant characters. I'm so excited to talk with Danny about it. It looks like he's just joined. Him an invitation. There you are. Hello.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, I'm just Ducky.
I love that. I love that expression.
I just got done reading the introduction to your book, The Last Man in Cleveland, so that everybody kind of has a taste of what we're going to be talking about and getting into. Are you excited to answer all of the questions?
I'm incredibly excited. Yeah.
Good, because there's a lot of them. So we are going to start with the ones that were posed on Instagram, and I'll go through it. I'll read them to you, and then you can kind of elaborate. We'll just kind of meander and see what happens with the story, with the conversation. Does that sound good?
I love that. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So your book, The Last Man in Cleveland, it's an apocalyptic story of a plague. You have lots of different people and timelines that all seem to converge and come together. It's a very exciting story. So one of our first questions was from Waff Michael, and he said, why Cleveland? Also, what's your process for world building, especially for already real worlds?
Those are great questions. Well, for anyone who's from Cleveland, they might not love the answer that for why I chose Cleveland. The themes of the novel are really focused on loss and mourning and grief and the process of going through all that. And I wanted to pick a location that even right off the bat, right in the title, subliminally at least, would give that implication just immediately. And there's a very specific mythos in the American I mean, the term is used pejoratively, but the American Rust Belt, of like a fallen greatness, of like an excellence that is exclusively past tense. And I thought that there was no better like immediate city that comes to mind than Cleveland. I've been told by a lot of people who are from the area that there's like a significant amount of rebuild, and it's like becoming a very beautiful and lovely place to live again, and I'm so thrilled about that. But that was like my thought process when it came to deciding on a main location. And the second part to that question was how to build the apocalypse world in a nonfiction setting. Honestly, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it might have been. I just thought, what might people do if they were scared and panicky, and just leaned into their worst instincts, I suppose. And how would that look? And that's where a lot of the decisions came from.
I like that. That's very interesting. I know, as someone who's from Cleveland, in the Cleveland-ish area myself, that is interesting. I don't take offense to it, though. Like, it is what it is. All right. Our next question was from our author, Adana, and she asked, I love an apocalypse. What was the hardest part of writing an apocalyptic world? And counter that with the easiest. Were they something small or big?
That's also a really good question. So I am like by no means a disease expert at all, and I would never pretend or purport to be. But I've had some friends of mine who like are doctors read the book and be like, this isn't how it would work. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know. I know that's not how it would work. So that was like definitely the most difficult part, was making it something that at least had the texture of realism to it, if not explicitly like the scientifically accurate version of it. I'm not, who was it? Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. He was like an engineer before he started writing all his space fiction. And so he brings that aspect to it. I was a political science and literature major. I have no basis in real sciences. I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is the emotionality of what that would feel like, and that's what I leaned into. And so conversely, that ended up being the easiest part, was like talking about how it would feel to watch that happen.
That's really interesting. I like that. I know when I first read through the book, it was just, I mean, I have no background in anything medical or anything like that. So I was just like, this just feels very real to me, and that makes me uncomfortable.
Thank you.
I'm relieved to know that that's not how it would happen.
Yeah, all my friends were like, oh, come on. A disease could never do that. It wouldn't spread this fast. And I was like, I know. I know. I don't. I'm not trying to make it realistic.
So our next question is from J Strong Poetry, and he asks, it's hard for me to write anything and ever feel like it's finished. How long did you sit with it after writing the last page before you felt like it was done?
Wow, that's a great question. That reminds me of like whose quote is that? Is that, a writer never finishes, they just walk away?
Yeah.
Like that's really so accurate, and so authentic to the experience. It's really difficult. Like, I mean, I remember getting like, just the other day, getting my first physical copy and flipping through it and being like, oh man, I need to change so many things. And it's very difficult. And for that reason, like, I have kind of made it a point, to like never have like really sit down and read my own novel. I could probably rewrite the whole thing from memory at this point, but I've never like sat down and read it like a book. I've sat down with like an editorial lens. I sat down, mostly with like an editorial lens, But I've never actually sat down and tried to read it because I think that I would find myself wanting to change so many things. Yeah.
It's kind of funny because I had seen this one post once, and it has to do with editing. And it was the best way to edit your book is to get it completely done, publish it, and then open it to a random page 3 weeks later.
That's completely right. That is exactly how I feel.
And I think as storytellers too, you know, I believe like if you're writing novels and you're creating your own universe and your own story, you have to, in order to do it well, you're just an inherent storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I feel like as a storyteller, the story doesn't ever really end, does it? It changes into other kinds of stories or whatever,
Yeah.
but like there's this awareness, especially with apocalyptic novels and novels that feel very real. It's just like you kind of wonder, well, what if a character had done this instead, or you know, like there are so many ways that it could go. I feel like the story doesn't ever really end, and that's why we have fan fiction.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So our next question is from Spilling Grace, and she says, "What's your prepper style? Would you try to bug in and survive, or bug out and try to go somewhere else?"
So like doomsday prepper. What's my instinct?
I like this question. So what would you do?
That is a great question. I think for me, what a great question. I think for me, honestly, I think the most important thing in life really is building and maintaining a strong community. I think I would dig in and try to focus on taking care of the people around me and building some sort of network of self-sustainability. Because I mean, when you're really faced with that level of like true apocalypse, then the only thing that you can do is try to survive with people who you care about. So I think that's the honest answer, most honest answer that I can give.
So where I live, I'm like a country bumpkin. So I live out like in the middle of farmland and country. So I feel like I would be okay. we got all these farmers around us working the system with like, you know, exchange and bartering and everything. And I feel like in an apocalypse, no matter where you go, it's going to catch up to you eventually. So you might as well be comfortable for the ride.
That's exactly true. That's exactly true.
So why don't you tell us a little bit, let's really dig into the book content now and talk about everything about The Last Man in Cleveland. So when you were getting ready to write your novel, what inspired you to just go for it and sit down and create this book?
So I wrote the last chapter first. There was just this idea in my head of like an author, and am I allowed to spoil my own book on this? I feel like I shouldn't do that.
Censor the spoilings.
That's fair. I mean, for what it's worth, it takes place in a church. And there was this like whole scene in my head.
Hence the book cover.
Exactly. The book cover is of the last scene. That's right. I've got my copy right here. Yeah. So like, I just had this vision in my head of, what happens in the last chapter, and I wanted it so badly to make sense. So then I had to figure out how everyone got there. And that's where it really comes from. It's like, why are these two characters in this church? Why are they saying the things that they're saying to each other? Why are they so angry, really? And where does that anger and that hurt come from? And I had to backfill it. I had to write it up to that point. And so that's really like where the bulk of the story comes from, is trying to answer those questions that I started for myself at the ending.
That's very interesting. I've heard a lot of writers say that they write the ending first and then they go back and they start over and they begin again. When I write, I kind of like jump all over the place. I attribute that to my ADHD and not being able to focus for one thing and for super, super long. But it's kind of interesting, like to have an ending idea and then you just work backwards from it. And honestly, that probably gives you a really good foundation because you already know where you're going instead of like jumping around and hoping you end up somewhere.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it constrains you a little bit. I mean, because you know, like where it has to go. I mean, of course, you can always change it, but I feel like, and I'm sure you can relate to this a little bit. Like as a writer, sometimes you just have this scene that you like refuse to let go of, and
Yes.
maybe it's not the best one for the book, but you're like, damn it, I'm gonna get it in there somehow. I'm gonna make this work.
There are pivotal things that it has to be that because it was like the core of the idea.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's the end. That's the ending is just like the thesis of the whole book, just right there in 4 pages. And that was the point. Like the whole book's point is the last chapter.
So while you were writing and creating this and working backwards, did you experience any setbacks? Like, did you find yourself deleting a lot of things as you were writing, or was it kind of a smooth transition? What was the process like in writing the content?
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, the biggest setback that I had was writing a book about a plague that I was trying to publish in February of 2020. That was that was a big setback. That didn't end up being as foresighted.
It didn't age well.
Yeah, it didn't age well. I had to sit on it for a while after that. No, I mean, in all seriousness, it took 6 years to finish this novel. I started it, like I said, with the ending, and started writing backwards, and then I would show it to friends or mentors or like relatives, and they'd be like, "Oh, it's good, but like I feel like you're missing stuff. Like I feel like it needs to have like a different character. I feel like there needs to be a reason why they do a certain action." And I'll be like, okay, like I'll go back and I'll write more. And it grew from that. So it started off as 16 pages. Now it's 260. So it was really just years and years of editing and expansion. There were a lot of setbacks. I probably wrote 1,000 pages and deleted most of them. Definitely setbacks.
But in spite of that, you have this beautiful book with this amazing story. It's easy to read. It's relatable. So I think that's a testament to your determination and your willingness to stick it out to create something good. Like, to make it all the way to the finish line is incredibly inspiring. So it's kind of nice, I think, to hear from other writers the setbacks or the things that they experience behind the scenes. Because it's easy to look at this and just be like, this is like a beautiful and amazing, and I will never have anything like this. Why does it come so easy to everyone else? But it doesn't, because it's a process.
It really doesn't. And I mean, I wouldn't be here without you, Raven. So I really am so grateful to you and all the work that you do. You took a chance on it, and that means the world.
Well, it is my pleasure. One of the things that I loved about your book when I read it is that so I was a big fan of Lemony Snicket and A Series of Unfortunate Events when I was a kid. I loved it. I loved the storytelling and I loved that style. And so when I read your book, it has that same, with the author narrating what's happening and putting in his own commentary into the story. It felt very nostalgic and like comforting. And when I tell people about your book, it's so hard to talk about it because I'm like, it's apocalyptic, but it's funny. It's nostalgic. It's comforting as we all die. So
yeah. That's right.
Um,
I'm glad that's really because that's what I was. I mean, it's what I was going for. I wanted it to be funny. I wanted it to be about sad. I always find that like like I wanted to write like maybe complicated things, but in very simple ways. And I wanted to write simple things in very complicated ways. And I wanted the end of the world to feel like a hug, and I wanted it to be funny. And that's like what I wanted to do. So to hear that just means a lot. Thank you.
yes, well, that's what I tell people. I'm like, it's the end of the world, but you're gonna laugh. It's gonna be good. We're gonna have a good time. So, besides novels, are there other forms of writing that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, I love writing in all aspects. I've done a screenplay adaptation for Cleveland that I'm
Very
hoping.
exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm really hoping, something goes somewhere with that. But even if not, I'm happy to have done it. It was an incredible experience. I've considered working on a graphic novel that I'm bouncing ideas around. I want to really play into, like, I don't think there's been a lot of conversation on the historical mythos of the Celtic folklore. A lot of it was buried after the British
I love it.
invasion. And like there's just a lot of deep legends in the land there that like sink into like our cultural conversations, but we don't really know like that they're from like Celtic folklore. So I have an idea for a graphic novel about that. But yeah, I love writing screenplays. I'm starting to work on a pilot for a TV show. I think it would be really fun. Yeah, I love all kinds of writing.
That's pretty cool. So before we go on, we got a question from the audience. This one is from BO Day 35. What character do you relate to most and why?
Ooh, that's hard. I would say, I mean, you know this. Every character has a piece of me in it, whether I like it or not. I would say that the best answer that I have for that would probably be the author. Just because I wrote the novel in like a very specific time in my life when I was working through a personal loss, and I think like the act of writing actually helped me move past that. So I read the book and it's like reading a journal entry from 10 years ago, and you're like, that was me. Like, yes, I relate to that, but that isn't who I am anymore. And I think the act of writing actually is why I'm not that person anymore. I think like the act of actually finishing the book helped me grow. So the answer is kind of the author, but in a way that like you would scroll back through your Facebook page and see a status from middle school and be like, ooh, wow, yep. I was like that once.
I think that's very interesting. And I think that speaks as to why the book feels so authentic, though. Like when you're reading the parts that are being narrated by the writer and you're getting these views into his life and what is happening, I see how that you putting yourself into that makes it so real. And I think that brings such a richness and a vulnerability to the book also, knowing that it came from a place that was very real for you at the time. And it's comforting to know that it was therapeutic for you, that you were able to move past it. I think that's something that I admire the most when it comes to people and their writing, is how much they're willing to invest of themselves into it, and the bravery in doing so and acknowledging it too, and not being afraid to acknowledge it. Like we humans, we have a problem expressing our emotional fragility. So it's refreshing to find people who have found a creative way to express it and put it out into the world, because not only is it healing for you, which then heals the people around you, but you're sharing it with other people that you don't even know. who are
Right.
going to read it, and they're going to feel that, and they're going to feel validated, and they're going to feel like they're not the only ones out there. And I think that that is such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I really couldn't agree more. Those are the books that I found myself connecting to the most. I mean, I think of like the authors that have really inspired me. I think of people like Jacqueline Woodson. I don't know if you've read any of her writing. Um,
I've heard of her.
she's brilliant, and that's like her method of storytelling is just so vulnerable. Um, and like she's an author that I really look up to for that reason. But yeah, those are the books that I really love the most, and what I really was hoping to make, and it means a lot to hear you say that.
So Adana just commented and she asked her question. Adana, we actually answered your question a little bit earlier in the live, and that was the hardest part of writing an apocalyptic world. So do you want to just touch on that again? It was, what was the hardest part of writing an apocalyptic world? Can't talk. And what was the easiest?
The hardest part of writing the apocalyptic world. I mean, I feel like I'm just gonna have a different answer to this question every time I hear it because I just think of
That's
other
okay.
stuff.
Like, we have more people now here too, so.
I mean, the hardest part of writing the apocalyptic world, that's like, I mean, it was, I think we talked a little bit about this, but like, yeah, it's about, trying to make it realistic in ways that I'm not an expert in, and I don't like pretending to be an expert in. But leaning into the parts that I do know and am familiar with, and that is, um, like the emotional aspect of watching the world go through something, and putting that as authentically as I can onto a page was probably the part that came most naturally. The part that was the most difficult, I mean, I guess in other words, it was the research, right? It's it's always the part that's the most difficult. Is like you want to just say something, and then you're like, wait a minute, that probably isn't right. So then I would spend, an hour or two just going down Wikipedia rabbit holes and finding primary source documents on historic events that nobody's probably heard of before, and just trying to make it like as true as I can.
So besides the story of the apocalypse, you have all of these very vibrant and real characters, and there's quite a few different ones too. So where did you get the inspiration for your characters? And did you find it hard to juggle so many different storylines and so many voices?
The voices, I think, were probably the hardest part to juggle because I wanted them to be really distinct, like the voices, and I had a hard time making sure that I was getting into the right mindset before I wrote like a Nadia chapter or a General Wertheim chapter. I wanted to make sure that I was like in the mindset for those people. I had a lot of fun with these characters. I mean, one of them is like just very clearly a send up of a painter from France in the 20s that I just love. I just love his story. Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, just someone who I think was an incredible character in history. And I wanted to like give a nod to that. And so I made a character that's very similar in affect. A lot of them were just like kind of ripped from people that I would meet. Like honestly, I in my acknowledgments, I put a little thank you, and this was on purpose, was to everyone that I stole from, because I feel like I did a lot from just like people I would talk to, like in college, or like meet once at a bar and be like, you are like the most interesting person I've ever met. I'm going to put you in the story, and you'll never know, and that's fine because like it's not going to be you, but like I just can't stop thinking about the person, like the way they talk or the way they act. I mean, even the church at the end of the book is based on a church that I went to when I was like 10 or 11 years old with my godmother. And I just remember sitting there, and like there's a detail, and it's in the book about the church that that it was built in like the mid to late 1800s, and it's like this beautiful ornate like neo-Gothic architecture with these incredibly detailed stained glass windows. But because it's like in downtown New York City, like all the buildings were built so tight to it that the stained glass windows couldn't catch any light. And like that detail just struck me and stayed with me for 10, 12 years until I finally put it in a book. So yeah, I mean, the characters were easy because I would just think of like some of the people that I've met in my life and steal their affect.
So I have a question, and this isn't one of the ones I asked you, so bear with me. It just popped into my head.
Totally.
So you have a character, and his name is Simon Lazarus.
Yeah.
And he's one of the main characters. Did you purposefully choose the last name Lazarus because of the biblical story of Lazarus rising from the dead?
Yeah, so originally his name was Simon Laris. And I had a friend of mine who like came to me after reading a first draft of it, and I wish I could take credit for it. It was brilliant. She was like, "Do you mean for this to sound like Lazarus?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." I mean, of course not. I was like, that's fantastic. Like, can I use that? And she was like, "Yes, you may use that." So that was when it was first like 20 pages. But having that name, I mean, I think the phrase is like nominative determinism. Like your name shapes part of who you are. And like once I had the last name, I was set. I was like, okay, now I know everything else I need to know about this guy. I know like his purpose in the story. I know the thematic issues that he's going to touch on. I know like all of it. And it was a gift. Like the last name was a gift from this person. I mean, it was someone in a writing class when it was a short story that I wrote, like, and wanted to shop around. So it wasn't even like someone who I regularly keep in touch with, just gifted this to me. And I was like, thank you. That's the rest of the book. Thank you so much. You don't even know.
So you spend all this time creating this beautiful book. You put it all together. You decide to send it out into the world to hopefully get published. So what was the process like for you? Was there parts that surprised you or things that you weren't expecting? And what was your favorite part in the whole publishing journey?
Well, the part that probably surprised me the most is that any publishing house that you could think of, or any symbol that's on the spine of any book in your bookshelf, is a part of a conglomerate of like 3 companies, and 3 companies own like all the publishing houses in the world. And I did not know that. I did not know that going in. That was not what I expected. So that was really the part that surprised me the most. I mean, and so I wanted to then, after I like learned all this, I was like, okay, well, I don't like that. I don't want that to be the path that I take. And so I wanted to find like an indie press that I really respected. And my favorite part was hearing back from you. I mean, hands down, it was of course my favorite part. I've been trying for 2 years to find someone who would take a chance in the middle of a pandemic on a book about a pandemic. And I probably would have given up way earlier, but my girlfriend is the most supportive person in the world, and she kept me going. And I think she was the one who like found your page originally and sent it to me. I was like, I think you should apply here. And I was like, okay, if this doesn't work, then I'm just going to shelve it and work on other projects and come back to it in a couple of years.
Well, it's a good thing I said yes then.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great thing you said yes, because I was really like very close to just saying, okay, well, I tried. I should try other things, I guess. But yeah, it was one of the best days of my life when I heard back, and I was so excited about it.
So Ashley Manis has asked, what is your favorite part about writing?
Wow. I don't know. It's maybe you feel this way too sometimes. It's a very difficult thing to do. It is so hard. I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe it just comes like so naturally to you. But like some parts, sometimes it's just really, really hard, and you just find yourself like staring at a page for weeks even. Um, but then like something will just click, and you'll be like, I get it. I know what comes next. And those are the best parts. Those are really the best parts. Especially when they end with something good, because like 9 times out of 10, that feeling is followed by something that you end up deleting altogether. but but when you like cross that line and you like say, I can see it now, like it's clear, I know what comes next. Then that is just the best feeling. It's just the best feeling in the world.
So you wrote a book. You have it out. It's available now for pre-order, and it officially releases on March 15th. So
2 days.
exciting on Amazon, Kindle, all major bookstores, and
That's
signed
right.
copies on Curious Corbett.
Mm-hmm.
And you're writing thank yous for all of your ordered books, right?
I'm trying, yes, yeah. It's completely optional. I obviously don't want to send a letter to your house if you don't want one. But yeah, I've got like stacks of them here ready to fill out. Yeah, I could not have done this by myself. It's impossible to write a book by yourself. And I don't trust anyone who says otherwise. It's impossible. And I just have so much gratitude for all the people who helped me, whether, like if they know it or not, even if it was just like a small word of support, that it just means so much. And I want to personally thank every single person who gets a copy. So if you have gotten a copy, or, I mean, even if you haven't, your support still means the world. You can fill out a form on my website, just your mailing address and, any little note that you want to drop in there. Be like, I don't know, draw me a turtle or something, and I'll draw you a turtle. But like, I want to say thank you.
That's a dangerous offer.
It's okay. I'm not a good artist, so I don't know if they'll regret it or not.
Well, I think that's quite nice. I think that one of the perks to being an indie author is more personalization with your readers.
Yeah,
and more
definitely.
of a community and just interactions. Who doesn't want to get a letter from their favorite author or from their favorite new book? I think that's so cool. So they can go onto your website and register for one.
That's right. Yeah, it's right up there on my website. You just go to the header, click on the tab that says "Thank you" with an exclamation mark, and just put in your best mailing address. I want nothing more than to send you a personalized thank you. I've sent out like nearly 30 at this point. I've sent a bunch.
That's amazing.
I know. I mean, it made me really happy that I wasn't sure if like people were going to actually fill it out, but it's been pretty steady. I've gotten a couple new ones every week.
Well, I hope you're
yeah.
prepared because we're going to LA next month and taking your book there.
I'm so excited.
Lots of exposure.
Yeah, I know.
So
I'd love to send more.
Yes. We have paperback and hardback available now. And on your release date, we'll have your ebook launch. And your ebook is going to launch for 99 cents for the whole first week. That's super
right.
exciting. And when we have your ebook out for 99 cents, we have something exciting coming after that, right? So we are going to do a special giveaway through Curious Corvid for the 99-cent ebook. If you pick up Danny's 99-cent ebook and leave him a review, screenshot your review and send it to Curious Corvid, and you'll be entered to win either a signed copy of Danny's book or a CCP exclusive merchandise option.
That's
We
right.
also have Last Man in Cleveland t-shirts. So if you want, then if you already have a book, you could get a t-shirt or anything else that you see on the website that you like. So keep that in mind. It's very exciting. And then we'll also, on the 15th, be dropping an exclusive Curious Corvid Last Man in Cleveland book bundle.
That's
It has
right.
a bunch of cool stuff in it. It's going to be super fun. And it is a one only. So once it's gone forever.
That's right. So make sure to get yours soon.
Yes, we have so many exciting things coming for Danny's book. It's going to be fantastic, and I'm so excited. So we have all this stuff happening now. What does the future look like for you?
That's a great question. I'm going to take a deep breath for the first time in what feels like a very long time. And I'm very excited about that. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I want to get started on a couple of new projects. It was kind of hard letting go of Cleveland. And I'd been so stuck in that world for 6 years that I feel like I've forgotten how to write other things. But I'm starting to finally like have those wheels greased and starting to roll with them. So that's very exciting for me. In the near future, I'm hoping to have a couple of author events in and around the Charlottesville, Virginia area, hopefully Richmond and DC as well.
So exciting.
Yeah, I'll go to any bookstore that wants me. I'm just so excited about this. I'm serious. It just makes me so happy. Yeah, so I've got a couple new projects coming up, and yeah, be on the lookout for them. I'm sure I'm going to make an announcement soon if something really starts to take shape. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Make sure that you're following Danny for all of his updates, and make sure that you are following Curious Corvid. And if you sign into, if you go onto our website, we have a members only platform. Sign in, become a member. It's free, and you'll have access to our newsletter, to our blog, our forum, and all of the other exciting things that are coming from Curious Corvid, and possibly some exclusive content from Danny too coming up. So I started the live by reading the book blurb. Would you like to close it by reading it?
Sure. The book blurb?
Yes.
Absolutely. Simon Lazarus was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, where he paved roads and worked on construction with his friend Bill Polsky. Bill Polsky's wife was headed to the Olympics. This would prove to be very unfortunate. Officer Olan Oliveira was focused on providing security for the Olympics and intercepting jewel thieves. It might have been quite successful if it hadn't have been for the bats. Ivana Carvalho, the youngest minister of health in the history of Brazil, was counting down the days until the tourists of the Olympic Games returned home and she could focus on the emerging bat problem. As it turns out, this was a rather reckless misjudgment. General Hunter Wallace Wertheim III had two objectives: protect the visiting president of the United States at the Olympic Games and control the outbreak of a mysterious bat-borne illness. He would do neither, despite being quite capable and not at all spineless. Narrated by the writer, we follow the story of seemingly innocuous people and the events that lead to the end of the world. The apocalypse has never felt so real as we enter the world of bats, sickness, and the last man in Cleveland.
Well, you can find this book on Amazon. You will find it on Kindle for our ebook on the 15th, and you can order it in all major bookstores worldwide, and signed copies are available on our website. Thank yous are available for registering on Danny's website. Thank you so much, Danny, for taking some time to talk about your book and about yourself and all of the things. That was super fun.
It was, yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I really appreciate that.
So make sure that you're following Danny. Don't miss out on any of the exciting things that are coming. We are going to the LA Times Festival of Books in April. Danny's book will be there along with all of the other books published so far by Curious Corvid. And we're very excited to see all of the people and talk about all of the things. So I hope that you all have a great rest of your day. Danny, is there anything else you'd like to say before I close out?
I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been so supportive throughout this entire process. If you're on the stream right now or if you're watching it later, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you very much for taking time today to talk or to listen to me and Danny talk. And remember, we may be different species, but we're all part of the same family. So be kind to others, be kind to yourself, and we will see you soon.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Bye-bye. She told me, when I die, I'm going to be reincarnated as a bird, and I'm going to fly around by the ocean forever. A thought occurred to me for the first time now, just now, as I stared at this gray gull, and it stared right back at me. I watched the bird, and it watched me until it caught and flew away. She's gone. If you love someone so deeply, so truly, you give a piece of yourself to them. When they choose to leave, where does that piece of you go? Is there more of you in the world now? Or is there